Thank you for watching the EFIL1 podcast. I'm Anthony AP. Two of my favorite albums of all time. Seriously, like both albums to me are classics. You cannot deny that Straight Outta Compton just set a tone for an entire hip hop generation of not only West Coast music, but music that brought forth explicit lyrics and profanity. And then N.W.A followed it up. Well, first after Straight Outta Compton, they came out with a short EP called 100 Miles and Running. But then they released a full-fledged album, their second full-fledged album called Ends for Life. And this album, to me, was a really extremely dope follow-up, minus Ice Cube, because Ice Cube had left the group. Make sure, before we go any further, don't look any further. Make sure you like this video, but most importantly, subscribe to the channel. This or that, simple, is real easy. Which album is better for you? Straight Outta Compton or their follow-up, Ends for Life? I'm gonna keep this real simple and real short. There's no way that Ends for Life could be a better album than Straight Outta Compton for a lot of different reasons. Although Ends for Life is the better, in my opinion, the better album of the two, and Ends for Life is my go-to album, if that makes sense. I know it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm really not. Let me explain. Straight Outta Compton will forever be one of the dopest hip hop albums of all time. This is when N.W.A were at their full strength with Dre, Ren, Easy, Cube, and DJ Yella. The songs on this album are untouchable. There's no way any hip hop album by a group or however you want to put it can touch songs like F the Police, Gangsta Gangsta, If It Ain't Rough, the MC Ren solo joint, which MC Ren killed. I mean, we're going to get to MC Ren in a minute. But, we just keep going. The only weak song to me on Straight Outta Compton was Something to Dance To, which was kind of like their version of like a dance song. I guess you could say Something to Dance To. Kind of reminded me of a 2 Live Crew joint, a little dancey joint right there. And Express Yourself. Those was like really the only 2 weak songs on that album. I never gravitated towards Something to Dance To, and definitely never gravitated towards Express Yourself. I just thought that song was very, very weak. I like the sample, but I just never really got into that song. But when it came time for N.W.A to do the follow-up album, Ends for Life, like I said, like we all know, Cube left the group, so they were already kind of, I'm not going to say weakened a little bit, because one of the dopest members of the group, both lyrically and pen-wise, left the group. So somebody had to pick up that slack once Cube left the group. And here's where I'm going to talk about MC Ren and why MC Ren is probably one of the most slept on West Coast MCs of all time. MC Ren stepped to that pen. MC Ren stepped up not only to that pen, but stepped up to that microphone like a motherfucker. Because when Cube left a serious void in that group, pen-wise and lyrically. Because we all know Easy didn't write his own rhymes. Dre didn't write his own rhymes. So pretty much it was between the DOC and MC Ren doing overtime and double time writing for Dre and Easy. And at that time, the DOC probably would have stepped in on Ends for Life and filled that void that maybe Cube had left, but the DOC had gotten into his car accident, and that's all been documented. But MC Ren did a hell of a job on this album. MC Ren was literally the MVP of this album. The way his voice was, interjection of his voice, the powerfulness of his voice, his pen game, and his lyrics was just dope as hell on this album. I mean, every song on Ends for Life was a banger. And to me personally, the production on Ends for Life was a lot better than Straight Outta Compton. Straight Outta Compton had more of a boom bapish kind of late 80s East Coast sound, whereas Ends for Life was the introduction to G-Funk. And that's probably because Dr. Dre was chilling with Above the Law and Code 187 them, because let the story be told, Code 187 them of Above the Law, the producer and rapper in Above the Law, was the originator of the G-Funk sound. And he kind of, Dre kind of, got it passed on to him. Or Dre, kind of was like looking over Code 187's shoulder. And Dre kind of took G-Funk from Code 187. from Above the Law. But anyway, this album was really kind of like the birth of Dr. Dre and the G-Funk sound. And this album was so much more better produced. The live instrumentation was used on this album, and the samples on this album was crazy. The samples on this album. So that's why I think that Ends for Life, even though Straight Outta Compton is untouchable, Ends for Life was a better sounding, better production, better produced album. And, you know, like the production for Real Ends Don't Die, real heavy hitting, boom bap is still kind of sound, but is that song was just N.W.A. in your face, just giving you what N.W.A. was all about at that time when this album dropped in 91. Every song on this album was a banger. Appetite for Destruction, the interludes, and the skits on this album was funny as hell. I mean, how can we forget about, you know, the she swallowed it, which was classic. I'd rather F you by Easy, which was a classic. You know, the Automobile was a hilarious song. It was a comic relief song. Just the skits on this album was real dope. You know, To Kill a Hooker, One Less, Find Them, F Them, and Flee. I mean, this album was just a classic West Coast album that still sounds good to this day. You could put in Ends for Life to this day, and it still sounds just as fresh and clean and potent as it did in 91. Days are way back. I mean, I can just go on and on and on about this album. I know this album word for word, lyric for lyric. I think Eazy-E shined on this album. Ren, obviously, like I said, shined on this album. And Dre sounded pretty dope on this album, too. Dre was, you know, spitting those lyrics like he wrote them himself. Very dope album. I'm going with this album. Even though, like I said, Straight Outta Compton is untouchable, this is my favorite out of the two. But now I'm going to pass it over to you. Let me know what you think. Which album do you favor? Which album do you think is better in your humble opinion? Thank you once again for watching the Entertainment EFIL1 podcast. I will check y'all later. Until next time, peace.